Hi, everyone. Kumar Data Train here with the Meridian Point and Agile Meridian. Welcome to another episode of the Meridian Point. And today we're joined by Myles Hopkins. He is the founder of Be Agile, based out of, I think it's Johannesburg, South Africa, and a pioneer of non-disruptive innovation. So very curious to hear more about that. His groundbreaking approach helps organizations implement tomorrow's technology today while maintaining operational stability. From global giants like American Express to regional powerhouses across Africa, Myles' unique combination of intensive strategy workshops and cutting-edge technology solutions has revolutionized how businesses transform. So let's welcome Myles to the stage. Here we are. Hi, Myles. How are you today?
All good. All good, Kumar. Thank you very much for having me. Really looking forward to having a chat with you today and being part of this amazing show.
Thank you so much. You know, I meant to. I'll work it into the questions to ask about Milo, since that's in your background. I know that's a new thing that you just released not that long ago. But we'll get started with the term non-disruptive innovation. What drove you to develop this approach, and how does it differ from traditional transformation approaches?
I think to a large extent, Kumar, maybe I need to just clarify that we do get involved, obviously, with disruptive innovation as well. But I think one of the issues why we sort of got into what we call the non-disruptive innovation is that I believe that organizations need to be literally innovating every single day. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change everything within your engine. It's just like, what are you doing? What are you continuously improving? When you and I first met, we met in Omaha, and we were both on the Enterprise Business Agility Strategist workshop. And one of the things that stuck with me there was the four big metrics that you were always going to drive. And that was value for customers, value for community, value for employees, value for shareholders, flow, quality, and then happiness of, again, customer, employee, shareholder and community. But it was that quality, that continuous innovation that I think a lot of organizations just don't do really well. So they don't make time for innovation, and it doesn't have to be changing the whole engine of the organization. It's like we are continuously being driven to be more efficient, more effective, faster to market. But how can we just do those small step changes that moves us in the right direction? So it doesn't have to be totally disruptive. It just needs to be, we're on this journey where we just continuously fine-tuning the engine of the organization to be a little bit better than it was yesterday, a little bit better than it was yesterday. Every now and again, you're going to have the big picture stuff, the disruptive innovation, as we're living in this world of artificial intelligence now. You know, there's a lot of stuff happening in that space. But don't always go for the big picture, the big stuff. You know what I mean? It's that continuous improvement. And I think a lot of organizations are too stuck in there. I was with a client earlier on this week on Tuesday in Cape Town. They're a big insurance company, and they just said, we spend 10 hours a day with our heads stuck down in the way we've always done things and don't get enough time to think about, could we do this a little bit better? So it's about that continuous improvement at the end of the day, without forgetting that there is the bigger picture stuff as well that one should also not lose sight of.
Yeah, I love that, and it aligns very much with our approach. And actually, it's funny. We had a podcast a couple of weeks ago with one of my partners, Mike Jabber, and we were talking about exactly this, about the paradox of continuous improvement. That every company, every individual wants to improve, but people get so stuck in the day-to-day, the mundane stuff that they have to do every day, that they forget, or they don't put time aside for that continuous innovation, that continuous improvement, right? And It ends up costing them. And so it is a paradox to a certain extent that, people want it, but then they don't prioritize the time, the sort of the non-disruptive innovation. I like that term.
And I think also there, Kumar, and it wasn't specific to this client, but it was stuff we spoke about on Tuesday. they're part of a bigger organization. So they're a division within a bigger insurance company, and they obviously have their IT department, and they believe that their IT department is working on this stuff. But when you actually go speak to the IT department, they're working on the projects that are of interest to them and not necessarily on the projects that business wants. So, you've got these business people who are trying to get stuff done better. They think IT is working on it, but they're actually not working on it. And I mean, that's just this particular client. But we see that a lot where, I think I read an article by McKinsey about 3 or 4 years ago that they say 86% of what IT deliver into a business, the business never asked for in the first place. So, it's about getting everybody on board, working towards just making the organization a better place to work, better for their customers, better for the communities they operate within, better for their employees, and giving their shareholders better value.
Yeah, again, a lot of synergy with what we're doing with the disruptor method is getting people from different divisional boundaries, if you will, right? IT, marketing, sales, engineering, whatever, together and strategizing together. Not that that doesn't happen today in today's world in most companies. It's just that, they may get together once a year and discuss strategy, and then they forget each other until they get together again next year, and people don't really always review, okay, so what do we accomplish and how much of the work that we did, and each of the departments provided value, right? So that combined value that all of them could do together. And so it sounds like your approach is to do just that, with your one-day strategy workshop. Can you describe that? It seems very similar to something that we do.
Yeah, so essentially this is just to a large extent leveraging off, the power of artificial intelligence. So literally what we'll do with a customer in the one-day strategy section is, we'll get a little bit of information from them, but we then let the artificial intelligence do its magic, and we start developing business model canvas and SWOT analyses and pestles and Porter's 5 forces and value chain analysis and a whole lot of other different things. And to be honest, it won't take us more than an hour to do that using the power of artificial intelligence, and it comes out in a good looking document. But that hasn't been tested with the customer yet. So what we'd do is do that prior to the one-day workshop with a customer. Then we'll sit with a customer and say, okay, this is what we've been able to generate using, artificial intelligence and asking the right questions. Let's now, let's question this and let's see, are we on point with let's say, for example, the business model canvas? Is these your target markets, your customers, etc.? What do we need to change a little bit, edit? So that by the end of one day, you've literally got what normally would have taken you months to generate, because you first got to start off, if you're doing a business model canvas, you actually start off with a blank canvas. Whereas with using artificial intelligence, we're able to actually populate a lot of what would normally be in a traditional business model canvas up front, and then workshop that with the client so that we actually come out with something that's bespoke for them and that they're comfortable with. And it shouldn't take us more than one day at the end of the day to get that right.
That's great. So, but you still have to get the information to populate the canvas, right? Or to feed the artificial intelligence so that it can come up with it. So you do that ahead of time through interviews?
Yeah. So what we actually come on, it's a little bit of a cheat sheet. So what the artificial intelligence does is it will go into that company's website, and it's and all of the stuff that's been published about that company. It will, if it's in, for example, in the banking industry, it will do an analysis of the banking industry in that company's geography. So it comes up with a lot of information that you might not even have come up with in a traditional workshop, because it is now, as we know, with the power of artificial intelligence, it's this huge body of knowledge that if you just point it in the right direction, it comes up with stuff. Yes, one still has, and that's why we do the testing of it with the client to say, this is what we've generated out of, and we don't even have needed to have got anything from the client. We're just saying, give us your website address, which we've already got because they're a client, and we're going to generate stuff for you out of that. And so, yeah, it's really powerful. It's still fairly new, and obviously with things that are fairly new, there's things that you got to fine tune. But it comes up with most probably 75% of what you would want in a business model canvas prior to the session, and then you just you do checks and balances and add and subtract in the workshop so that you actually come out with a business model canvas that, if you'd just done the traditional workshopping method, would most probably be not as rich and as comprehensive as when you can use AI to generate a lot of the info for you.
Yeah, I really, that resonates with me. The fact that you can do that kind of research ahead of time. And a lot of time when you talk to people, executives, they don't have the full picture, right? They have the picture from their perspective. There's the silo that they sit in. And so it's not that, running a months-long workshop to figure out the business model canvas is really any better. And maybe using AI to help sort of generate the first pass at this is actually better, because you get to see the full picture. You get to see how that organization fits within the ecosystem in the marketplace that they live in, and how they currently interact with that ecosystem, and how the ecosystem derives products and services from them, and what they might do differently, right, in the future. So it seems like a really good applications of AI.
Yeah, no, I think from that, Kumar, one of the things that I read a book not so long ago, in November actually, it's called Human Plus Machine, and it talks about how humans and machines are working together to augment each other, and they're much more powerful together. And a couple of the examples that it comes up with, which really talks about what you've just mentioned, is so one of the tasks they gave a set of furniture designers is design us the ultimate chair. You know what I mean? This chair must be the most comfortable chair. It must be made out of one piece of material. One set of material. It must be cost effective, comfortable. And they gave this to some of the top chair designers in the world, furniture designers, and they came up with about 30 or 40 different fantastic designs. But they gave the same instructions to artificial intelligence that came up with literally 2,500, 3,000 designs. And they chose one of the designs from the artificial intelligence. It didn't look like a chair, but at the end of the day, it was more comfortable, cheaper, stronger, ergonomically beautiful. And it's because when you look at the world of artificial intelligence, another example they use in the book, if you don't mind, is one about the research with cancer. So, normally if you're looking for a cure for a certain kind of cancer, that can take up to 10 years. Recently, they found a cure for one of the types of cancer, can't remember which it was, that took literally 30 days to do, because I could have the best oncologist in the world, but he or she only has so much information in their head. Okay, it might be the best, but it's only. Whereas when you go into artificial intelligence, you're talking about the whole world's information that's now at your fingertips, and that you can actually call on that information that can then almost swarm. And that's why they were able to come up with a solution within 1 month versus the 10 years it normally comes up with. And I think, coming back to the business model canvas, and that if I'm sitting in a room with 10, that could be the best executives in the world. We only have 10 brains. Whereas if I'm sitting with artificial intelligence, I have the whole world's brains at my fingertips to be able to test that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I have to read that book. What is it? Man plus machine?
Human plus machine. I'll send you. I'll send you the link. You can get it on Amazon. It's human and then a plus sign and machine.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll make sure to include that in the show notes for folks that are listening to this, so they can take a look at that book. Sounds fascinating. I mean, I always thought of artificial intelligence as it applies to people, as augmenting our intelligence, right? A sort of building on our intelligence, and it takes a human, at least for now, to really tap into the potential that AI holds for us because
Yeah.
we're in the driver's seat. We
Yeah.
can get garbage out of it, or we can get something useful out of it. And in the case
Yeah.
of the examples that you just cited from the book, it seems like those were examples of people getting really getting good potential out of AI and
Yeah.
using it for good. And that's always promising, and certainly I think more people need to do that. Um, where was I going with this? Yes, I think I'm gonna switch to the next topic, and something that we talked about before was this composable architectural platform.
Yes.
Can you walk me through that, and or have you already sort of described it a little bit in the
No, not
conversation?
really. So I need to give a shout out to a good friend of mine who you must probably know, Kuma, and that's Ari van Bennekom. So he
Oh
was
yeah.
one of the original authors of the Agile Manifesto. Ari sits in the Netherlands, and he's got a South African girlfriend. So whenever he's out in South Africa, him and I have a coffee. And Ari's been a guest at some of the conferences that I've run. But Ari introduced me to this platform. Because I think one of the things that we're always trying to do, if I can just take it almost to the agile world, even though obviously it has many more applications than just in the agile space, is that the reason that, Agile Manifesto was driven is, how could we develop software quicker than what we used to do before, particularly using the old waterfall methodologies, etc. But what you find and I'm sure many people will resonate with this. So in a lot of the bigger organizations, you find what I call this digital spaghetti. So you have literally tens, if not hundreds, of different IT systems that have different, computer languages, different databases, and they're all meant to work together. But it's like this big spaghetti. Now, I want this piece of software to speak to that piece of software because we need to share the data and make it more efficient. So what I then do is I put together potentially an agile project, and I start developing an API to connect those two pieces of software. But an API can take anywhere between 6 to 9 months, depending on the complexity. And all you're really doing is adding one more piece of spaghetti into this whole digital spaghetti. So we started actually talking about digital Zen, is where you're saying, what if we could actually take out as many of these systems as possible? I mean, one of our clients is a big bank and in South Africa, and just in their home loan division, they have 70 different systems just in the home loans division of the bank. So never mind the whole bank. So now they want different pieces of software to talk to each other. So what the composable architecture platform literally does is, so I'm not a technology person, by the way. I come from an HR background originally, but obviously in the world that we deal in, we've got to understand a lot about technology. So when this company, they're based out of Australia, spoke to me, they said, we do this and we build this box and and I just said, essentially what you're doing is you're building a digital bridge between the two pieces of software, okay? And it could be more than two. You could in fact connect all the pieces of software that you need to be able to, act a lot quicker and share information across systems. Now, one would say, well, what's the difference between that and building an API? Well, literally the difference is this: when I talk about a digital bridge, all I need to do is build a couple of rules to say, I want this piece of software to pull that piece of information out of that piece of software, and maybe it's dual, it pushes it back in again. And that literally, Kuma, when I was talking about an API, can take 6 to 9 months to develop. That can be done in hours. It can be, with this company, we actually offer a 1 day proof of value, where literally within 1 day we'll prove the value of this composable architecture platform. You spoke about American Express. So American Express is one of the case studies for this particular piece of software, and and it was within their Salesforce environment. So within their Salesforce environment, they were dealing with the people that were dealing with Salesforce had to go between 19 different screens, so 19 different screens, and that obviously is just not efficient or effective at the end of the day. So they had put aside, I think it was $2 million and a 1-year, 12-month project to actually reduce the number of screens. And with the composable architecture platform, they were actually able to reduce it right down to one screen within 35 days, and it cost them $300,000 versus $2 million. So what Ari and myself and the company's name out of Australia is called Tomorrow X have been really working on is something called, the 1-day sprint. So literally, instead of having 2-week sprints or 3 quarterly planning, within 1 day you can add value that you would normally have taken 6 to 9 months to do in building a traditional API. So again, I mean, one of the big banks out of the UK, they were able to take out 40% of their technology stack just by connecting pieces of technology that needed to speak to each other, rather than putting more technology into the stack so that other pieces of technology could speak to each other. I don't know if that makes sense. Come on.
It does. It seems really transformative to be able to have that sort of rapid integration between systems. I mean, not more than transformative. It seems almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I mean,
when we actually talk to clients about it, they say, no, that's not possible. We say, well, take us at our word. We'll offer you a free 1-day proof of value. Give us a use case and we'll prove it to you within 1 day. So you can actually see the value of it.
So how do people take advantage of this? Is it just getting in touch with you at Be Agile, or?
Yeah, no, look, we do a lot of the marketing on behalf of the Australian guys, and we also partner with them in actually taking it into the clients. We're not the technology wizards.
Yeah.
We're more the, if you want to use the old term, project manager. We really get in there with the client, find out what the needs are, and then start driving it with the guys that actually really understand the software very well, which is the guys out of Australia.
Are there
and we've got people in Europe and in America as well, but
that's amazing. So are there competitors in this space, other solutions to do the same type of thing?
There are. I mean, if you do a Google search for composable architecture, you're going to find a number of companies that say, but they haven't built this platform that truly builds the digital bridges. What they're actually doing, I'm trying to think of one of them at the moment. It's a SAP solution, but really what it's doing is just still building the APIs between them. And so they're looking at it from a composable perspective, but they're not building those bridges rapidly, which Tomorrow X can do.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, that's fascinating. I'm definitely going to be doing more research on that for some of the clients that I serve here in the U.S., and we'll be calling you if there's an opportunity.
That's great. Would be great to work with you on that, Kumar.
Yeah. In our prior conversations, you mentioned live iterations in your work. Is that similar to the 1-day iteration?
Yeah. Okay, basically, it's either the 1-day strategy stuff we're talking about, or this composable architecture where literally within 1 day, we've got a 1-day sprint versus and I mean, I think Kumar, you've been in the agile world longer than I have. Even though we're doing 2-week sprints, I mean, how much real value is delivered in those 2 weeks? I mean, it's not a lot. Whereas here with particularly with the composable architecture, we can prove real value within 1 day.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to have to learn more about that and tap into your brain for that.
When you're ready, let's maybe do a demo.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to do that. So I'm going to shift a little bit. So as someone leading transformation in the business agility community in Africa, what unique perspectives has this given you about transformation in emerging markets?
I think one of the nice things about, so I mean, if you think about, if we just talk about agile, in its form, I mean, I've really started talking beyond agile to value architecture, because agile is not always the answer to everything. But let's stay with agile. And in agile, we talk about, particularly cross-functional teams and teams of teams. And the key word here to me is the teams part. So if I have a look, for example, and I am very much generalizing here, so I put that out front. If I look at particularly the Western world, and here I'm talking about North America and Europe, that we very much what we call individualistic societies, meaning, I work, I look after my family, and that's it. That's that, and I've got my friends, but I'm not part of a much bigger community. And again, I am generalizing. Okay. In Africa, we're much more of what we call a collectivist society. And you'll find those also in places like India and, the Arab nations or whatever, where there's a story of a guy many, many, many years ago. And really, a really promising young black guy. And he was in South Africa. And as you know, South Africa had its apartheid years. This was actually during apartheid. So it is an old story. But he was doing exceptionally well, and his boss gave him an increase. He continued to do well, and his boss gave him another increase, and so it continued. And eventually his boss called him into the office, and he said, Albert, I've been giving you all of these increases, but you come to work still with the same old suit on and the same old shoes. And he said, what gives? And what Albert said, he said, boss, when you gave me that first increase, I then had to look after my elderly mother and father. And when you gave me the next increase, I had to look after my aunt and my uncle and, my brothers and my sisters who are unemployed. So as you gave me more money, I had more people to look after. And so that lends itself, that collectivist society lends itself very well to the agile space, where we are talking about teams and teams of teams. So you're actually talking about rewarding a team versus rewarding an individual if you're looking at bonuses, which is always, when I talk about this a lot at different conferences all over the world, and people look at me and they're like, you're crazy. I mean, of course, we've got to still give bonuses to individuals. And that's a story for another day. But in Africa, it actually fits in because, and it's not just Africa, there's obviously, I think the Indian community is very similar as well. So I think leading the transformation and agile transformation, getting that mindset shift is a lot easier than in other places. I think the other thing that a lot of people don't realize about Africa particularly, and I know you were talking about the developing world, but is because of us being sort of far behind on many things in the past, we've become very innovative. So in Africa, 80% of the population are unbanked, meaning they don't have bank accounts. But I can promise you that money and goods are changing hands every single day, and people have become very innovative around, different payment platforms through mobile phones and, etc. So by its very nature, because we were a little bit behind, Africa's become very innovative and is very open to new ways and of looking at things. And of course, we still have our challenges, like everybody does. But it's a very innovative continent, which also really lends itself to people thinking transformatively at the end of the day. I mean, when I was young, I lived during the apartheid era. There was no ways I thought that apartheid would ever be eradicated without a civil war, without a violent civil war. But yet, we actually found a way to agree amongst the whites and the non-whites that this wasn't the way to do things anymore. So people are open to that type of change.
Yeah, I love that answer. I had someone on my show just the other day talking about the differences in culture between the West. In this case, it was France. This person had done work in France, and of course, he's based out of India. And in India, and the differences in culture, and what you're saying resonates a lot with what he was saying as well. That sort of that collectivist mentality, especially in India, and a little bit more risk-averse culture in Europe, in France, and the impacts that they have on the adoption, if you will, of these team-based principles of work, right? And it's interesting because a lot of what you're saying about South Africa is also true about India.
Yeah.
Although hierarchy in India is probably more predominant structure than I don't know how it is in South Africa, but certainly in India, hierarchy is pretty important.
Yes.
So, yeah, very,
Yeah,
very, very interesting.
yeah, not so much with us. What we do, even though we still do have a very male, like a male dominated society. Having said that, that's more in the culture than it is, because we'll find in our parliament, for example, we've got more females in parliament than males. So
Mm-hmm.
there isn't the inherent, or there isn't the actual discrimination in gender, but culturally there would still be, in particular in some of the cultures where the male is dominant, but
Yeah.
it's falling away. It's falling away rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, we're getting towards the end, and I thought we'd end our show with some lightning round questions. So no more than maybe 60-second responses for these.
Sure.
We'll try them out.
That
So,
that's gonna be interesting with me with 60 seconds. Come on.
so your favorite hobby right now? What is it that gets you up in the morning?
My favorite hobby is what the thing behind me. Ask Milo is. So we've been obviously developing this AI platform. That the difference between it and ChatGPT is that we're going to have over 30,000 pre-generated prompts on there. So look, come on, my hobby is business. I mean that. I'm continuously innovating. So I just love doing that.
Yeah. So as far as Ask Milo, I think it's in beta right now, currently. Is
Yeah,
that
we're
right?
doing beta testing, but we will essentially be going live, soft live in March. It's ready. It's got a couple
Yeah.
of little twists and whatever. But yeah, I think the big difference, as I said, again, when you look at a ChatGPT, it's this amazing huge canvas, but it's an empty canvas. So how do
Yes.
you ask the right questions? And that's what Ask
Mhm.
Milo is. It's the pre-engineered prompts that you can just say, okay,
Yeah.
for HR, I want to use that prompt. You do it. It's got Llama 3.1 built into it, so you just execute it on the system. It comes up with your answer.
That's amazing. Yeah, I have actually a trial to it. I just haven't had time to try it, but I will
No
definitely.
problem. Just let me know if you need more time. We'll definitely give you more
Okay,
time.
sounds
Yeah.
good. All right, next one. What's your go-to metaphor for explaining transformation to skeptical executives?
I think I don't know about a metaphor, but one of the quotes that always sticks in my head, and I know I don't have it exactly right, but when Justin Trudeau at the World Economic Forum in 2018 said, "The world's changing faster today than it's ever changed before, and today is the slowest it'll ever change into the future." So you know what I mean? It's things are just, and you can't know everything. So much is
Yeah,
happening that just get to grips with your area that you're responsible for and do the best you can out of that.
yeah. All right, one more. What is a book that comes to mind? A book that changed your perspective on business transformation?
Well, obviously the Human Plus Machine book was really good. The other one I read not so long ago, it's by a lady out of Australia called Susan Abishara.
Mhm.
And again, the title I'm not 100% sure, but it's Agility is Dead. Who wants to be fast and adaptive anyway? And obviously that was said tongue in cheek, and she was
Yeah,
taking all the arguments of why people are saying agility is dead, and actually coming up with some fantastic thoughts around those. So yeah, I mean, I read that. I went to Norway last year, and I read that, half of it on the way to Norway and half of it on the way back. It's a brilliant book, and I'll share
okay.
that link with you as well, so that you
Yeah,
can put
that
it
would be
in
great.
there.
Yeah, for me and the readers. I know there was I think it was a blog post that was it Jim Highsmith or someone wrote Dave Snowden maybe back in 2012 or 13, and it was titled "Agility is or Agile is Dead, Long Live Agility." I think it was the
Yeah.
title of that blog post, and it was very controversial back then, and certainly that the drumbeat of Agile is dead has only gotten louder over the last
No, it
10
has. And I
years.
mean, but that's why I like Susan's book, is to say, okay, well, you're saying that, but I mean, what other options do you have?
Yeah.
It's, I think the thing is with everybody, and you and I know this as well, is that agile isn't a framework; it's a mindset.
Right.
And as long as you start from that perspective, then agility is not dead.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Myles, we're running out of time. Anything, any parting thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, Yorma, when I was speaking about that quote from Justin Trudeau, there's always, I have another one that I always put into some of the discussions I have. And, there's three types of companies, and you could say three types of individuals. There's those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and then those that wonder what happened. And I just want people to be very, make sure you're not with that third group of wondering what happened, because the world's changing so fast that if you don't wake up, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, it's similar to what we say: either disrupt or be disrupted.
Yeah,
Right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited that you were able to come on, and hopefully we'll get you back on and maybe dive into some other topics and maybe check in on progress with Ask Milo or some other topics like that.
Thank you, Kumar. Thanks for having me. I
Thanks a lot.
really, I always enjoy speaking to you, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.